When you think of Antarctica, what comes to mind? If you said ice, penguins, and polar bears, in a way you got it right. But what if I told you that right in the heart of this icy continent, there is an active volcano that spits out gold? Yes, pure gold. Every day, valuable particles are thrown into the air, amounting to thousands of euros. But make no mistake, this volcano is not just a wonder of nature. It also carries a dark secret. A few decades ago, a tragic event marked the history of Erebos forever. Something that took more than 250 lives in one fell swoop, leaving scars that ice has never erased. Today, Bello Mundo takes you to the heart of Antarctica, where you'll discover the secrets of Mount Erebos, the volcano that produces more than 6,000 euros in gold a day and carries horror stories like no other. Number 1. Location and geographical context. If you think Antarctica is just a land of ice and penguins, you can forget that now. In the heart of this frozen continent, there is a volcano that not only spits fire, but defies all expectations of what we imagine a place like this to be. Meet Mount Erebos, the southernmost active volcano on the planet. Yes, active. Located on the remote Ross Island, it rises to an impressive 3,794 meters above sea level, a veritable fortress of fire in the midst of eternal ice. And if you think that's surreal enough, calm down. Erebos is not just any volcano. It is part of the Antarctic volcanic belt, a mountain range forged by colossal eruptions that, over millions of years, have sculpted this icy and desolate landscape. And don't worry, it's not alone. Next to it stands Mount Terror. Erebos and Terror. Sounds like the name of a horror movie, doesn't it? But this is the real geography of Antarctica. But what really sets Erebos apart from the world's other volcanoes? Gold. Lots of gold. Number 2. Discovery and history of exploration. The story of this giant of fire and ice began in 1841, when the volcano was spotted by British explorer Sir James Clark Ross during a naval expedition. And since everything that impresses needs a name to match, Ross decided to name it after his ship, the HMS Erebus. As for Erebus's neighbor, of course the name came from the other ship in the expedition, HMS Terror. Together they soon entered the history of Antarctic exploration, becoming imposing landmarks on the frozen continent. In the years that followed, several expeditions passed through the region, but it wasn't until the 20th century that it began to be truly studied. With the advance of technology, scientists were able to install instruments and analyze the volcano's behavior more precisely. Number 3. Geological formation and volcanic characteristics. Mount Erebos isn't just a volcano, it's a living geological gem. Classified as a stratum volcano, it has been sculpted over millions of years. With each eruption, layers of lava, ash, and rock piled up, shaping the iconic conical silhouette that today stands out on the icy Antarctic horizon. And the secret behind this natural spectacle? It rests on a rift zone, a crack in the Earth's crust where the tectonic plates slowly move apart. This separation creates a clear path for magma to rise to the surface, fueling the eruptions. Now, pay attention to this detail. The lava spewed out there is made up of a rock as rare as it is intriguing. Phonolite. If you've never heard of it, don't worry, we'll explain. Phonolite is a volcanic rock rich in silica and alkalis, mainly sodium and potassium, which doesn't appear very often in volcanoes. And there's more. When struck, it emits sound, hence the name phonolite, from the Greek phone, meaning sound. But what really blows scientists' minds is the peculiar chemical composition of this lava, which carries traces of gold and silver. And if that wasn't rare enough, the real highlight of this icy giant is at the top, a permanent lava lake. Number 4. Crater and lava lake. Lava lakes are no ordinary attraction. In fact, only 6 volcanoes in the world have continuously exposed magma lakes. And Mount Erebos? It's part of that select club. Right at the top of the volcano, amidst the relentless Antarctic ice, bubbles a lake of lava that reaches temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Celsius. While the surrounding mountains are covered in snow and ice, this giant defies the environment. High up, gas bubbles explode on the surface of the magma, creating a visual spectacle as bizarre as it is fascinating. It's as if the volcano were alive and breathing, but it doesn't stop there. Even in this extreme environment, where hellish heat meets freezing cold, there is life. Microorganisms known as extremorphals thrive in areas close to fumaroles, the vents that release hot steam from the Earth's interior. These tiny survivors live where almost no other life form would dare to go. Now comes the most interesting part. What does this have to do with space? Everything. The extremophiles of Erebos can give us valuable clues about how life can exist on other planets. Extreme environments like Mars or the frozen moons of Jupiter and Saturn share similar conditions. And of course, NASA is watching. The space agency is conducting active research on Mount Erebos, exploring how these microorganisms can help us understand the conditions of life outside Earth. In other words, apart from anything else, it's a bridge between our planet and space. Now that you know a little more about the geography and history of this colossus, let's get down to what really shines out there. Because as well as lava, it spits gold. Number 5. Gold's geological context. When we talk about gold, it's easy to imagine mines in tropical forests or arid deserts. But the relationship between this precious metal and volcanoes is a detail that many people don't know about. Certain magmatic and hydrothermal processes create the perfect conditions for gold particles to concentrate, and Mount Erebos, even in the extreme cold of Antarctica, is no exception. In general, volcanoes can concentrate gold in 2 main ways. The first occurs deep inside the Earth, where magma carries heavy metals. When this magma cools or interacts with surrounding rocks, the metals can accumulate in veins and mineral deposits. The second involves hydrothermal systems, where superhot water circulates through the ground, dissolving minerals and then depositing them when it cools. It is this process that creates some of the world's most valuable deposits. The Lihir mine in Papua New Guinea is a classic example of volcanic gold in an archipelago. The Carlin Trend in Nevada, USA, was born from hydrothermal fluids seeping into rocks, and the Hishikari mine in Japan is known for the absurd purity of its gold, also linked to volcanic activity. Curious, isn't it? Number 6. Gold emission, an unusual phenomenon. Now tell me, did you ever imagine that a volcano in Antarctica could spit gold into the air? Well, Erebos does just that. Among the gases and ash it spews out every day, microscopic particles of gold float. These crystals are so small, less than 20 micrometers, that you wouldn't be able to see them with the naked eye. It's the equivalent of the size of a grain of pollen. But make no mistake, despite being tiny, they add up to 80 grams of gold a day. In market value, around €6,000 a day. Now multiply that by a year, more than 2 million euros. But how does Erebo do it? Number 7. Gold production. Experts who study it say that it all starts in the depths of the earth. Erebos is located in a region where the crust is thinner, making it easier for mineral-laden magma to rise. This magma, rich in heavy metals, including gold, rises through fractures and fissures until it reaches the surface. When the magma finally meets the freezing Antarctic air, it releases a mixture of gases, mainly sulfur dioxide, along with metallic particles. It is at this stage that the gold crystallizes into tiny particles. These tiny crystals, less than 20 micrometers, smaller than the thickness of a human hair, are carried by the wind and can travel for kilometers. These particles are so light that the wind carries them for long distances. With a lava jet that reaches altitudes of up to 3,800 meters, Erebos transforms the frozen landscape into an impressive mix of extremes: fire, ice, and of course, gold floating in the air. But now the big question arises. Hasn't anyone struck it rich yet? Is no one exploring? Number 8. Lack of economic viability. Despite all the fascination surrounding the volcano and its gold emission, the thought of mining these particles in Antarctica is out of the question. There are several reasons for this. To begin with, the continent is protected by international treaties that prohibit the commercial exploitation of its natural resources. That would be a major obstacle, but it's far from the only one. Secondly, there's the environment. The environment around Erebos is hostile, with extreme temperatures, violent winds, and extremely difficult access. Any operation would require an absurd infrastructure to survive the climate and to transport the material to consumer markets. Not to mention that the logistical and technological costs would be so high as to make any extraction economically unviable. And there's more. Remember how we talked about golden rain? The particles spread through the air and can be found more than 1,000 kilometers away. In other words, trying to collect this gold would be like trying to gather dust during a windstorm. The truth is that it's better this way. Erebos may be a gold machine, but it keeps its treasures the way nature likes them, far away from any human ambition. Number 9. The crash of Air New Zealand Flight 901. Despite attracting attention for its unusual occurrence, the volcano was also the scene of one of aviation's greatest tragedies. On November 28, 1979, a tourist flight over Antarctica ended catastrophically when an Air New Zealand aircraft crashed into the side of the volcano, killing all 257 people on board. That morning, Flight 901 left New Zealand for the south, offering a unique experience, flying over the Antarctic ice, a tour reserved for those looking for something beyond traditional tourism. The promise? A rare glimpse of the far south of the planet across pristine landscapes with cinematic views of a wild continent. It was an excursion that had been done before, without any problems. The plane was modern, the onboard service impeccable, and a sense of security reigned among the passengers. But that day, something got out of hand. At midday, already over Antarctica, the captain reduced the altitude so that everyone could better appreciate the white scenery that stretched as far as the eye could see. Cameras clicked. Passengers were impressed. It was the height of the tour. What nobody knew was that the plane wasn't where it was supposed to be. Due to an error in the navigation system, the aircraft was flying over Ross Island, directly in the path of Mount Erebos, and not the McMurdo Strait, where the flight was considered safe. The danger was just ahead, but no one could see it. In Antarctica, a treacherous phenomenon known as whiteout creates the illusion of a white horizon with no clear contours. Snow, clouds, and ice blend together, blurring the distinction between sky and ground. To the crew, it looked like they were flying over a plain of ice. But in reality, a volcano almost 3,800 meters high was in front of them. The alarm sounded, but it was too late. The aircraft crashed into the side of Erebos, causing a devastating explosion. None of the 257 passengers and crew survived. It was New Zealand's biggest air tragedy in peacetime. But what followed after the crash was almost as chaotic as the disaster itself. Number 10. Outcome. As soon as the dust settled, the famous blame game began. The initial investigation pointed the finger squarely at the crew. The conclusion was simple. The pilot had flown below minimum altitude, ignoring safety protocols. But things weren't so black and white. A second investigation revealed something much more complicated. Planning errors, uncommunicated route changes, and operational failures were behind the disaster. The crew, who until then had been blamed, were unaware that the route had been changed a few hours before the flight. On the plane's navigation map, the route led directly to the volcano. The error wasn't just the pilots, it was the systems. The case became an open wound in New Zealand. Many believed that blaming the pilots alone was unfair. The practice of flying at lower altitudes to please tourists was common and encouraged. Air New Zealand, once a source of national pride, was criticized for a lack of clarity in communication and for trying to protect its image. For years, the tragedy was surrounded by controversy, cover-ups, and misinformation. The plane's fuselage, scattered across the slopes of Erebos, has become an involuntary memorial. Under the weight of snow and time, the wreckage still remains there, a silent reminder of the tragedy and of human frailty in the face of nature. But as the decades passed, the pieces began to fit together. Air New Zealand, which initially denied fault, acknowledged its responsibility. The company publicly apologized to the families of the victims and admitted that miscommunication and the pressure to deliver a unique visual experience were decisive factors in the accident. The Flight 901 disaster changed global aviation, forcing airlines to review their safety protocols for tourist flights and flights over remote areas. Today, flying over Antarctica is still a rare spectacle, but the lessons learned on Erebo ensure that this time the horizon will no longer be an invisible trap. And so we end another journey, this time through the mysteries and secrets of Mount Erebos, this giant of fire and ice lost in the heart of Antarctica. Now I want to know from you, what surprised you the most? Was it the gold floating in the air or the tragedy of Flight 901, which marked the volcano so deeply? Leave your comment below. We love to know what you think and how these stories move you. If you enjoy exploring the most extreme corners of the planet and discovering places that seem out of this world, keep an eye on Bello Mundo. There are still many mysteries and incredible adventures waiting for you. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until the next adventure.